time for one of our newest segments on the show, Blade to Greatness, where we hear from a retail industry leader who shares their insights and wisdom on how to excel in this dynamic and competitive field. In this segment, we learn about the essential skills and qualities that every retail executive needs to lead their teams and their business to success. Whether we're talking about the corporate office or stores, we'll uncover valuable tips and advice that you can apply to your own retail career growth. Today, we'll speak with Ron Thurston, co-founder of Ossy, best-selling author of Retail Pride, podcast host, speaker, advisor, and board member. Ron leverages his extensive experience leading retail operations for America's most prominent brands to bring attention to the issues facing frontline workers and retail leaders today. After releasing his book, Retail Pride, and the Retail in America tour and podcast, Ron has co-founded Ossy to disrupt how the retail industry hires, engages, and connects retail workers with retail brands and technology partners. Today he's here to talk to us about an incredibly important aspect of change and culture that every retail leader needs to foster, implementing a career development culture as the first step to change your mindset and make change. Let's listen to what Ron has to share with us. Welcome, Ron.
Great. Thank you so much, Casey. I love a conversation about how to retain and have career development within retail because it is by far the number one thing I hear and also shows up in surveys around why I stay in retail or why I don't stay in retail is about mentorship and career development conversation. There's no exception to that. It's not compensation. Certainly a lot of conversation about flexibility and work in part-time, but the majority of anyone who's worked in brick and mortar retail who has chosen to stay in this role because they love it, it's because we're having important career trajectory conversations, which may or may not be within the organization. They may be ones that take you to a different company, but someone has really guided you in that journey. And I wanted to just spend a couple of moments because I was recently doing a webinar with Sucharita Kadali from Forrester, and they just released some statistics that I think are fascinating. So if you missed that webinar, I wanted to share part of the turnover is that retail does have higher turnover than other industries. So in April of 2022, a little more than a year ago, the average turnover in all trades is 3% per month. So quit rates are the total number of quits during the entire month as a percentage of employees. So on average in every industry in April 2022, 3% of the workforce turned over in a month. In retail, it was 4.4% of the total workforce. And today, as we sit, both have gone down. So April 2023, it's 2.5% in all industries. And in retail, it's gone down a full percentage point to 3.5, which is great news because there was a lot of conversation about not being able to hire and therefore have high turnover rate. So good news, it's going down, but there are still real pain points. One around inconsistent and unpredictable scheduling, around benefits like limited employer sponsored benefits, little or no career advancement, and understaffing. And the reason, the understaffing becomes such an important point in retention because it said in April 2022, 63% of workers say that staff shortages are contributing to their burnout. And that led to lost work days and to depression and anxiety and sick days. All of this is because of staff shortages. So as quit rates have gone down, there's still a staff shortage problem. That there's a very high cost to what that means. This kind of idea of how culture and brand and how you communicate that in conjunction with career development is a critical component to retention. So the good news, again, just to summarize, quit rates going down, yet we still have significant amount of open, and we have a significant amount of people who are making decisions about staying in retail based on career conversations that may or may not be happening today. That's part of Ossy is also let's assess where you are in your career and let's suggest some other opportunities for career advancement based on your current skill set.
So, Ron, one of the things that has always struck me in this topic is that in the past, we've always heard a lot of retailers using phrases like, our store teams, they are the front line that represents our brand to the consumer. And when you hear that, you would always think, well, then they must really highly value those employees and because of that, if they really are the face of the brand to that customer, then surely you're doing everything you can to develop their skills, their not just sales skills, but other operational skills to make them better serve those customers and offer them a career path so that they stay with you in that brand. But I think historically, what we all know is that even though we heard retailers say that, it didn't really hold true, right? It wasn't really, you didn't see that at the end. And when you talk to those store teams, most store teams didn't feel like that what was coming. I'd like to say that it's gotten better. And I think just hearing you talk about it, it gets pretty clear what some of the things that need to happen. That's a mindset that does need to change and to become more of a practical reality. I mean, do you believe that's definitely where we're trending? And do you think that maybe what we saw during the pandemic and what happened with stores, that's been that final push that has gotten retailers at the executive level to move in this direction?
I wish, Ricardo, I could say consistently yes. I think there are great demonstrations where that has been true. And there are things that we have never learned. And some of the same bad habits exist. And so I do have opportunity to speak to a lot of candidates that are either currently in job search or thinking about making a change. And so much of it is related to exactly what you say. And that the frontline teams and every retail brand have so many of the answers that you want to learn about your customer, about the product, about why they choose to shop with you, why they convert, why they don't. The people who engage with a live customer and converts or doesn't understands exactly why, because you've had really thorough conversations, and it's data you will never be able to capture on a website. You never know why 90+% of the people on your site never convert. You don't know why. Sometimes you'll get a pop-up survey. I'm sure the response rates on that are pretty low. But in a store where I think some of this falls down is if someone would just ask me, I would tell you exactly what needs to change. And so creating forums where I shouldn't say what needs to change, where we could improve or where product can be better or inventory levels or store design, all of this, it can actually be captured by people who are standing in front of their customer every day. And so creating forums to do that, whether it's store visits, it's coffee talks, it's Zoom meetings, it's town halls, whatever works for you, then I think retention and that conversation are so inextricably linked. Just last weekend, I was in Sawgrass Malls here in Florida, went into a store and into someone who used to work for me. And the first thing that he said was, I remember when you visited the store and you sat down with us and had coffee in the morning before we opened, and you asked us all what we loved about working here, what we didn't, what we could do better as a company, how we could improve. Let's talk about product. Tell me what your customer is saying today. For me, it was an hour of time spent and, $10 worth of Starbucks. And this person years later remembers that meeting. And wow. I think you can't underestimate the power of what that means to field teams to just sit and listen and act and respond. It's the greatest thing you can do to retain your teams.
Yeah, I think you really set an example with your Retail in America tour for everyone to get back into the stores. Even when it was the least convenient, you really showed a way of doing this. Because if I worked on a retail floor and I was looking for a job change, you'd be my number one dream phone call, right? I would already be following you on LinkedIn. You would already be like the ideal, I've got to get a meeting with Ron. I'm looking for a career change. So I think that you've become this great ambassador. And I think that bridge, it's hard for other people to say how to grow, how to develop these types of cultures. And I just feel like it's so much of your DNA that you offer that you're just like a natural resource. So I'm so grateful that you join all these conversations and these podcasts to really open that up to say there is a resource, there is a way, because I think on both sides, they both want to come to you.
Thank you, Casey. That's really kind. I would say it's easier to do than you think it is. And that engagement is nothing more than honest and thoughtful and empathetic conversation. And we all know how to do that. But just doing it is the first step. And whatever that needs to look like. And I just think sometimes we're afraid to take that first step because you're also afraid of maybe what you're going to hear. Sometimes it's like you coach the team before the CEO arrives and you say, well, make sure you don't talk about this and don't do that. And I would come from the place of, tell me the worst thing. What do you hate about working here? Like, tell me. And in a very thoughtful and honest way, because they want you to tell me the truth. So sometimes I think we're afraid to ask the questions because we're afraid of what we're going to hear. And we can't improve if we don't know. We can't change retention. Core of this conversation is retaining great people. You can't retain them if you don't provide the opportunity to tell the truth and then change it. And that for me is the best thing you could do, is to say, you know what? I'm so glad we had that meeting. I didn't actually know that. And therefore, this is what we're going to do differently at our company today. And maybe award that person next company town hall, say, well, great. The best idea for the year came from Casey when I visited the store. There are ways to create culture that is about feedback and about recognition that is so powerful, yet so easy to do.
Yeah, I think that is a great way to summarize what those specific key traits are that every retail leader should take away from this conversation, and how to make that culture better and how to really work towards retaining those important store teams that you have today, and making it more enticing for the new ones, for the new folks that you have coming in. So Ron, thank you so much for sharing these thoughts and words of wisdom with us today.
Thank you, Ricardo and Casey. It's a pleasure.